You think the most shocking moment at WWDC 2026 was Tim Cook's farewell? You're wrong. The real bombshell wasn't a goodbye. It was a surrender. Apple, the company that builds its own chips, its own operating systems, its own everything, just admitted it can't build its own AI. They're renting Google's brain, a 1.2 trillion parameter Siri, powered by Gemini. And here's the kicker. Your phone can't even run it. Let's rewind. For years, Apple told you privacy was the priority. On-device AI, no data, leaving your phone. That was the promise. But behind the scenes, something broke. By early 2025, Apple's AI strategy was in crisis. Siri's big upgrade, the one they showed off at WWDC 2024, kept getting delayed. Internal meetings turned into emergency sessions. Mark Gurman reported that Apple's top brass finally admitted the truth. They couldn't build a competitive large language model from scratch. Not fast enough. Not cheap enough. So they made a deal. In January 2026, Apple and Google announced a deep partnership. Gemini would become the foundation of Apple Intelligence. But the scale is what nobody talks about. This isn't some lightweight model. We're talking 1.2 trillion parameters. Custom-built by Google, exclusively for Apple. The cost? Roughly $1 billion per year. That's the price of admitting defeat in the AI arms race. But wait, why rent instead of build? Look at the economics. OpenAI operates at a minus 122% profit margin. Anthropic spends about $1.25 billion a month just on compute. Training a frontier model costs 9 figures every few months. Apple looked at that spreadsheet and said, no thanks. They have $147 billion in cash. They could afford it, but they chose not to. Because they realized something most people miss. Owning a frontier model is a treadmill. You retrain every few months. You lose money on most inference. And the costs never stop. Here's where it gets clever, though. Apple didn't give up control entirely. The heavy Gemini inference runs on Apple's own private cloud compute servers, not Google's. They're renting the model weights, but they own the infrastructure. The chips, the power, the cooling. That's the real bet. Apple is betting that frontier models will become commodities. That the real moat isn't the AI itself, it's everything underneath it. The data centers, the energy grids, the supply chains. Things that don't scale on software timelines. And that brings us to the hardware problem. Apple's new Siri AI requires at least 12 gigabytes of unified memory to run the most powerful on-device models. That means the standard iPhone 17, with its 8 gigabytes of RAM, is locked out. You need an iPhone Air, a 17 Pro, or a 17 Pro Max. On iPad, you need M4 or newer with 12 gigabytes. On Mac, M3 or newer with 12 gigabytes. Even the Vision Pro needs M5. This isn't just a software update, it's a hardware divide. The old question was, can my phone run the new iOS? The new question is, can my phone run the full Apple Intelligence? And for millions of users, the answer is no. But even if you buy the right hardware, you might not get the full experience. Apple confirmed that the new Siri AI, when it enters beta later this year, won't be available in the EU or China. Not immediately. So the most advanced AI Apple has ever built will be locked behind a paywall of geography and hardware. Let's step back. This is the same company that designed its own silicon, built its own modems, and refused to compromise on control. Now they're renting Google's brain. Some call it a surrender. But maybe it's something else. Maybe it's the most expensive lesson in humility Silicon Valley has ever seen. Apple realized that in the age of trillion parameter models, the hardest thing isn't building the AI, it's building everything around it. The chips, the power, the distribution. And they're betting that in the long run, that's where the real value lives. So the next time you ask Siri a question, remember, you're not talking to Apple. You're talking to Google, filtered through Apple servers, running on hardware most people can't afford. And that's not a victory. That's a compromise. The most expensive one in Silicon Valley history.